ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Real Estate America's newsroom. It is currently the 19th of April in the year of our Lord 2022. Has a recession just started in the United States of America? 40-year mortgages, adjustable rate mortgages, inflation, all of these things. Oh my. Today, guys, we have a power pack show, as some of you might have saw in the show notes. We're going to be talking about the new 40-year mortgage modification and what this means. A lot of our folks have went into forbearance from the pandemic and the COVID situation, and what is our government doing to go ahead and assist and get people into a 40-year mortgage, and what does that mean? Adjustable rate mortgages, for those of you that lived through and came through the mid-2000s, we've commonly heard adjustable rate mortgages. Are they making a comeback in 2022? So we're going to find out there. Is the housing shortage real? We keep hearing about the housing shortage being real. Investors buying homes like stocks and leaving millions of homes vacant in Florida. We've got a very powerful ABC clip and some investigative mainstream reporting to go and show everybody, and we're going to talk about it. And has a recession just started in the United States of America? We keep hearing about a lot of things in the news. Are we in a bubble? Are we not? Where is the quantitative easing that the Fed is doing? They're getting out of mortgage-backed securities and selling U.S. treasuries and so much more. What does all of this mean? Looks like a lot of things are happening, but we're going to discuss it today. And homeowners associations in the great United States of America are taking a stand to go ahead and block investors from purchasing homes. Why are they doing that? We're going to find out. We're going to talk to a whole bunch of fine gentlemen today that are in the know. But until we get to that point, we're going to introduce my esteemed and fellow co-host, Mr. Nick Sakis. How are you doing today, sir?
What's up, Sarge? How are you, sir?
Beautiful Thursday to you, Mr. Nicholas.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just got back from a Sam's Club run that normally is around $300. That today was $400. So we are seeing increases everywhere.
Inflation, economic pressures. We're all going into our reserves. What does this mean? I think a lot of the conversation we're going to have today regarding all of these topics that we just talked about, it's a mouthful. It definitely.
I'm glad to see the HOA stepping up, though. That could be clutch for some communities.
Well, it's interesting. Yep. I think a lot of people are starting to think about, hey, what can we do right now to control our own outcomes and make sure that our local neighborhoods are sustaining in the right way and that they don't get messed up. So we're gonna bring in Mr. Tony Barberino later. He was having some interesting conversations about some of the HOA pricing and some of the fine print and stuff like that's going down, but I'm interested to hear from him in the future. So how was the orange and blue game? Last time we talked, you were heading up there and had to pull some extra pennies out of the piggy bank for gasoline.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. My nephew's getting recruited. He's in his junior year, but Florida invited him to go for the orange and blue game. We were actually on the field with the players. Like, when you watch football on TV, it's one thing. When you're on the sidelines and hearing the pads crack and standing next to these guys, everybody looks the same on the field. And then you get down there and you realize that you're like this to most of those guys, right? 6'5", 6'6". It was really cool. We had a good time.
Good old American game of football. That's fantastic right. In every way. Well, that's about the only positive thing we're going to talk about today, I feel. So
slide into the first segment.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, buckle up here today. There's a lot of whispers in the winds out there in the great mainstream media, and there's a lot of folks, a lot of CEOs from different real estate companies coming in, sharing opinions. And it's interesting to me because as we start producing this show and we're working with the teams, we start looking back on opinion pieces from folks even 30, 60 days ago, making assumptions that haven't even come to fruition. So, but Nick, the 40-year mortgage, where are we going here with this? 40 years? Wasn't it always just 30 years?
Yeah, I think it's been 30 years for probably forever, right? The longest time, 15 years or 30 years.
Yeah. Let's bring in Tony. Let's bring in Tony Barberino here, and we're going to roundtable this 40-year mortgage here a little bit. Tony, I've got a report from, let's see here. The Federal Registrar. Okay, our federalregistrar.gov. HUD's current regulations allow mortgages to modify a federal housing administrated and insured mortgage by recasting the total unpaid loan term for 360 months, right? to cure a borrower's default. So this proposed new rule that looks like it's coming in hot would be HUD's way to go ahead and extend the term limit to 480 a month, allowing for mortgagees to further reduce their monthly payment as the outstanding balance would spread over a longer time, providing more borrowers with insured mortgages. And this would be the longest mortgage-backed federal security type situation that our country's ever seen. So, gentlemen, we have a lot of people that I'm seeing are still currently in some type of forbearance from COVID. We've seen an extension of kicking the can down the road to go ahead and help out a lot of folks. And now we're in such a weird economic inflationary situation with quantitative easing happening and economic pressures and business pressures. And so it looks to me like we've talked a lot about inventory being an issue in the housing markets. So hence the large prices of these homes going up. A lot of folks, maybe a year and a half ago, were talking about once these homes fix or adjust, or when those forbearances end, we would start seeing some inventory coming back. But it looks like the government's making a stand in here to go ahead and help people with a 40-year mortgage. So what does this mean, guys? Break it down for me.
It means you better start doing your math very carefully. It's like those Synchrony Bank backed credit cards that, hey, here's your $5,000 limit. So you're paying, 21%. So that, $100 t-shirt you bought is going to cost you about $1 million in 24 months. So my point I'm getting to, really short answer is when anyone, at least, as a real estate agent, I let my buyers know we have to look at affordability, what your fixed monthly payment is. And if they're going to go from 30 years to 40 years, while that may lower the number they pay per month over the bulk or complete length of that loan, you're going to be paying back a heck of a lot more money with a higher interest rate. So I can appreciate what is going to be done about trying to offset the higher interest rate by having a whole lot more payments to try to dilute it a little bit. But in the end, it's going to cost the consumers obviously a lot more money. So I would say to my clients, when they start talking to me about it, which will be any moment, you got to tread very carefully. So if you're going to go into 40 years, ask your lender if you could buy down your interest rate. Because if you're going to stay in that home, maybe 10, 12, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, you want to do some simple math and see if it's worth paying up front to lower that percentage. So if you're going to do 40 years, why not see if it's financially viable to pay down that interest rate and have the 40-year lower interest rate loan? But not every lender can do it, but I think quite a few can. So on the consumer side, on the buyer side, they should really look at the number they're going to pay, if it'll affect their lifestyle, if it'll keep them safer, if there's certainty in the future. But they're going to have to talk to a lender, because everything we talk about, everything the news talk about, it's like a bunch of glittering butterflies everywhere. But at the end of the day, when they buy a house, they're going to have a payment, and that payment is going to affect their life. And you want to make it as safe as possible by giving them the lowest number possible. So higher rates, more payments. You're going to want to do the math very carefully and think about how long you live in the house, what that payment's going to look like, and if something were to happen in the future, can you still afford to live at your home? So that's kind of like my initial, almost knee-jerk summary of what I suspect is going to happen regarding this new plan at 40 years, assuming you live that long.
Yeah.
So let me piggyback on that real quick. Okay.
Yeah.
My take here. Let's think about why you would go with a 40-year instead of this new adjustable rate that we're going to talk about, right? So we're in unprecedented times right now as far as actual interest rates going up and housing prices going up at the same time. It's usually an inverse relationship, right? We're not seeing any slowdown in the market because of the housing shortage for that pricing to go down. Also with interest rates going up. So this is not a fact. I don't know this for sure, but a birdie told me that at the same time that this new 40-year mortgage is being introduced, the lending requirements are starting to be more strict. So that old 45% debt to income ratio is going to come down, and you're not going to be able to go as high on the DTI, which is going to force out this extra 10 years to make sense. So at the end of the day, it still is in the consumer's best interest if they are getting more strict, because we don't want to see another 2008 collapse with the adjustable rate. Like, let's put people in these 40 years. We already bumped people up on forbearance, adding to their mortgage. At the end of the day, it's the only way that the middle class is going to be able to come in and purchase a house with the escalating prices and with the escalating interest rates. And I think it makes a lot of sense.
Interesting. I'm curious about hearing segment number 2 with adjustable rate mortgages kind of coming back in play in 2022. We have we're sitting here at housing levels that have hit 2007 intervals, and that was right in the mix of all of the heat. We're seeing the Fed quantitative easing. There's a lot of debate happening on whether it's fast enough or not, and if they were behind. So a lot of these people, Nick, that got themselves into a forbearance type situation, how would they go about now getting a readjusted type mortgage? What is their next step?
I mean, people like investors were licking their chops 12 months ago because they thought there was going to be an onslaught of foreclosures coming with this forbearance that wasn't going to happen, right? Everybody was saying that you were going to have to pay your dues in full, and they weren't going to add on top of the mortgage itself. That didn't happen. So now you have a whole onslaught of people who didn't pay for an entire year and then just got monthly payments added onto their mortgage. That whole lump sum just added on. So like, if I'm somebody who didn't pay, like I made out scot-free, right? I made out like a bandit. Not only did I not pay for an entire year, but now I just added onto my mortgage and I just kept going. I kept to, get to stay in my house. So I think more, and obviously I'm not a mortgage originator. Like, don't, talk to your person for that, your mortgage broker. But I think in hindsight of that, they took a look and they said, okay, if we're going to do this, we can do this with forbearance. Why not do this with the general consumer and just add 10 more years? I would 100%, this is my personal opinion, sign up for a 40-year mortgage before I even came close to an ARM loan, unless I'm investing, right? If I'm an investor and it's my second, third, fourth, fifth home, possibly an ARM loan. But even then, with the turbulence we have in the housing market, like, be very careful with that. But I don't think this is a bad thing, especially once people really start to see this DTI number come down and it's 40% or 38%. That's going to disqualify a lot of people if we stayed in 30-year.
Nick, if I can add to that a real quick post-it note, I think with the ARMs, a consumer would want to do the best they can to do their diligence to see what the area is going to be like. For example, in Irvine, there's no perfect city, but in Irvine, if someone were to get a 5 or 7 year ARM and they want to sell in the future, it's all about probabilities because nothing's 100%. However, in Irvine, it is, in my opinion, in my experience, generally or better reasonable. You're going to buy a house and sell it in 7 years. It's probably easier than most places around here, if I can just overgeneralize. Whereas if you're in some part of downtown Santa Ana where it's being developed and it's much older, you probably won't have as easy of a time to sell off that home and move on. So if you're in Newport Beach, Irvine, parts of Costa Mesa, Tustin Ranch, it's more likely you'll be able to sell and you have a desirable area, helping you sell that home so you can get out. The problem is going to be if you're in an area, you buy a house in a somewhat decent area at a somewhat decent price. If you got to get out of Dodge and sell before that payment's due, it's going to be tough. You might have to take a loss, maybe. So it has to be something.
There's a lot of concerns right now, Tony, Nick, that people are getting into, right? Super elevated prices that we've never seen before, and what in the world is going to go ahead and happen with our economical situation, kicking it down the road. Later on in the show, we're going to bring in one of the chief economists from the previous administration and was talking with Neil Cavuto, and there's some interesting things that they were saying regarding the housing market, and possibly we're getting into a recession. But so what happens now when all of a sudden we have a setback? I think that's a big concern right now. We're starting to see some pullback with some, let's just say, astute type folks that have the ability to purchase second homes or vacation type properties. This 40-year mortgage, is it something that is just for the folks that are in forbearance, or is it being offered now as a product?
No, they're talking about it as a product.
Okay.
Right.
Which,
for everyone.
which ultimately reduces my monthly
correct
mortgage payment, my PITI. Okay.
Yeah.
So most
I think that goes in parallel with this new debt to income ratio that hasn't really been talked about yet. Right. So I think that's how it's going to roll out. It's, oh, well, we did this because we're going to be more strict. We want to avoid 2008 housing crash. And, you know, adjustable rate mortgages have always been there. Like, just because you read a news article that ARMs are back, it doesn't mean the world's going to collapse. There's still like a very small percentage of loans being written as ARMs, and they've always been available, right? So like, this is not a terrible thing. It's just when the average person who can't qualify does a no income verification ARM loan on a second and third property,
Yeah.
that's when things get crazy, and it's not to that point yet. So
Yeah, understood. Yeah, it was a tough time back then. But now the interest rates, Tony, are starting to elevate in such a position that folks just can't achieve some of these jumbo type loans, right? Conventionally. And that's why we're kind of stepping into that world.
which is our
Affordability.
last segment. The institutions are buying up all the property for a reason. We've talked about this before
Yeah.
in other shows.
Yeah.
The rental economy.
Which is pushing up rents as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Good deal. All right, Tony, stick around for some of the later segments. We appreciate your insight. Oh, real quick, before I do go ahead and roll out, should we urge people to take a look at what 40 years of total payments look like on an amortization schedule?
That seems painful.
Yeah. So,
But yeah, take a look at it.
Yeah, if,
Yeah.
if it's the home you look, if it's the home, if the buyer loves the home, they want the school system, they have to have that house, or they're going to cry forever because they missed it. Then it's about affordability. So if you need to lower your payment, if it does lower your payment, and you could make an offer and get that house, it's what you love versus affordability. Affordability is going to be the ultimate answer. If it's way too expensive, then you have to just talk to your lender, work out the numbers and some what ifs.
gentlemen, my opinion here is this: affordability now doesn't mean that it's truly affordable later on in life. If I have 10 additional years that I have to sacrifice my financial situation and give it back to the lender that I could have then used towards things such as maybe I'm getting ill or need some type of medical care or need to help out some different things. So
It's
I
part of
urge
kicking the
everybody.
can down the road, though, right? I mean, we're financing $70,000 cars for 84 months, so we can afford the payment, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's just that's the world that we live in. It's normal, you know. My parents, the house I grew up in was $110,000. Like, I'm not even that old, and that I remember that being a stretch. I remember when we bought that house, I was 10, and it was like, man, this is a big stretch, right? $110,000. Now it's like get an Escalade for $110,000, and that's normal, right? I see them in the car circle all the time, picking up my kids. It's insane.
People got comfortable. They just like get with the gas prices. Remember, they were like $2.75 and people complained, and Starbucks cost more. Now we're at $5 and $6. People complain, but you give it maybe 6 more months, people start getting used to it.
Yeah.
I think we should get uncomfortable a little bit here.
Yeah.
So that we focus on moving forward in life, taking actionable steps, but also with sustainability and preparedness in mind, making sure that we can survive and educating ourselves and all of our clients and everybody that we know to be the best you and make sure you're making good sound decisions. So think 3 times, Sarge says, before stepping into a 40-year mortgage. Make sure you're crossing your I's and
What's that
dotting your
term?
T's.
Measure twice, cut once.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Tony. Stick around. We have an adjustable rate mortgage situation that's starting to come in. The interest rates are getting high, Nick. Why would an interest rate why would this increase in interest rates drive us or drive some borrowers to adjustable rate mortgages? Now, why don't you kick us off with this?
Again, back to affordability, right? If when this first came out, at least when I was getting into it, my understanding of it is they were investment vehicles, right? But then the average person was staying in their house less than 7 years. So as long as the prices of real estate continue to rise, it makes sense to do an adjustable rate mortgage, kicking the can down the road, have a lower monthly payment, get into a bigger house than you could normally afford because you're just going to sell it anyway for a profit. Like, that was the mindset in 2007-8. Like, nobody cared. Nobody worried. It's like, yeah, don't worry about it. Especially like in Florida and South Tampa, prices go up 30% every year, regardless of how hot other parts of the market are, right? In South Tampa specifically. So we didn't have any fear of real estate crashing, right? Housing prices going down. So that ARM loan made a lot of sense. Now it's just making sense from a affordability standpoint, and mortgages, they have to balance their books. From my understanding, again, I'm not a mortgage broker. I have plenty of mortgage broker friends, but they have to balance their books, and they have to have a certain amount of bad loans with their good loans. And back then it was like 40% of the loans were these bad loans. Now I think it's less than 5% last time I checked. So we still have an extremely low amount of subpar or subprime type loans that are out there now. So there's a lot of room to grow that. And so why not throw in these adjustable rate mortgages? Just know that the whole purpose behind it is to flip out in 5 years. Or like Philip said, the 40-year mortgage is a new option arm. That was the case too. That's like a lease, right? You offer, you set a purchase price. Are you going to lease option to purchase your car? And now you finance the car for 7 years instead of 5 because you're opting to buy that lease, like you're opting to buy that mortgage. It's real interesting, but definitely talk to a mortgage broker and get educated as to why, not just how. Like, don't just be excited because you can be approved. Figure out why this program is even happening. Like, what is the real intent for the ARM mortgage?
There's been a history in the United States of America getting into adjustable rate mortgages, and now we're looking at a 40-year mortgage product, right? And so many folks are, well, short-sighted in a way that we always don't want to pay a lot more than what we have to, right? Keep as much capital in the bank right now. We have this perfect kind of a storm where we're staring at food prices and we're staring at gasoline and fuel prices and all of these different economic pressures that are driving people. So, Chris, you've done some little bit of research on this adjustable rate mortgage, and actually you start seeing some of these things in Florida here recently. Fill us in on what your thoughts are here.
I mean, I agree with everything that Nick and Tony were saying. You know, what's happening now with the gap in, you know, wages versus home prices, and now just over the past month with rising interest rates, it's pushed those buyers that were approved in those jumbo loans, you know, down below. So now it's giving them another opportunity that wasn't necessarily marketed because of the bad, you know, thoughts of the 07, 08, in order to qualify them for these larger loans, in order to get them into these houses that, you know, they were looking at, but, you know, now they can't necessarily afford with the higher interest rates on a conventional.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in now, we'd like to participate with each and every single one of you. We highly urge you to go to reunation.com. Take a look at Real Estate America News over there, enter your information so you guys can go ahead and get the show notes that we put out to everybody on post show to keep you informed. Also, if you guys ever had any hot news, some comments, wanted to possibly be on the show as a contributor, you can fill out your information there as well. So make sure you go to reunation.com. We appreciate each and every single one of you. Couldn't do this without you. Nick, quantitative easing with the Fed, they're getting out of mortgage-backed securities. We touched on this a little bit last week. That's kind of a scary thing. I'm seeing a lot of a lot of 10-year treasury sales. We're seeing levels to 2007. People are having a tough time qualifying for that conventional loan size, right? With prices going up. So is this just the only other option for some folks at this point to kind of get into the game?
No. What do you got, Chris?
Well, it's funny because I was going to bring up, Philip just mentioned the, you know, interest only. You know, you're talking about a 40-year loan, and, you know, my lender was sitting here that I work with a lot. You know, the 30-year with 10 years interest only is an option also, which, you know, you start getting a large amount of people that are doing that. Now, if you're in that short-term loan, like we talked about pre-show with 92%, you know, of all borrowers only staying in that for 7 years, is it an option? Yeah. But on the backside of that, you know, from what I'm seeing, it's the hardest it's probably ever been to qualify for a loan right now, you know?
Right.
And so there's safeguards that are in place, but it goes right back. Everything is transactional to that specific client. If it makes sense for an ARM loan and they're, you know, relocating and their company's saying you're going to be in Orlando for 3 years, you know, an ARM loan right now would get you into the house that you want, and you're going to end up selling it. So why would you end up paying that 30-year conventional interest rate?
Yeah.
You know, you just
as long
have
as
to
you
do
know
your
what the
due
tool
diligence.
is for, right? So that's my point. As long as you know what the tool is for,
Right.
then you'll be fine. If you are treating your residential property like an investment because you know you're going to be there for a short period of time, as long as you understand that's what you're doing and you have that plan in place, but don't do this loan and not tell your wife, and then 7 years the mortgage payment changes and then you can't afford it, and then all of a sudden, you know, the house of cards come crumbling down. So use the tool as is intended. Make sure you have your eyes wide open.
So last week we talked about how the increase in interest rates are now starting to fuel a feeding frenzy of buying across the United States of America, right? A lot of people are really pushed to urgency because of the unknown future and the fear of missing out. And who knows where the interest rates are going to go. We're seeing stuff in the mainstream news about maybe 4, 5, 6 more corrections, possibly, to go ahead and get to a part where we can hedge inflation. So these products are sitting right in front of folks. I think that word of caution is very advisable. Chris, go ahead.
Well, it's one of those things, and Nick is a good. You have to look at every person's actual position and their specific, opportunity on a use by use basis, and then have the network around you to be able to give them all of the tools and options to make the best decision for them. With the jumbo loans being at 650-ish, now after a couple of weeks, that's not attainable now. So now these folks are going down a tier. And I'll tell you what, on a buy side, we thought the market in Florida was crazy in the 400 to 500. You should see it now. I mean, because now all those folks are in that buyer's pool because of the interest rates of what they can afford or get approved for. And they used to be in the 600s, and now the lines and the over asking, it's just crazy, but it's all cyclical too. You look at what it was 10 years ago versus what it is now. And if this person's in there for a short term, let them know that the interest rates, the Fed has to lower the interest rates at some point. That's just the way of the world, and it's all, how it works. And I've had buyers that have pulled out on deals because they didn't know on new construction when they could lock it in where it was going to be. Well, because of the rising home prices, they lost $100,000 in equity in 6 months. So you just have to really, know your local market. Like with Nick too in Florida, it's like you said earlier, it's a unicorn. You got to know what's happening, but give your buyers, all the tools and have the best people around them to give them the information so that they can make the best.
Right, and that's the point. Like what Tony brought up earlier, like all the agents listening to the show, your job is to know your market like the back of your hand, so that you could, you're not steering people, but you are advising people. Like Tony said, this neighborhood over here is a better investment for this short term because we know year over year, month over month, like it appreciates more than these areas because of this, this, and this, right? You are, as an agent, you're negotiating the best price for your sellers and buyers, and the market as a whole. So, real estate is micro, and then every person's mortgage is their own individual unique thing. So it's those two things combined. We paint broad strokes here on this show because we're covering national news articles, but it is 100% hyper local. And your value as an agent, in my opinion, is those two things: the contract negotiation and the actual the contract side of things, the legalities, and then knowing your market so you can advise people exactly what is in their best interest for their plan.
So we're moving into the next segment, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a clip here from ABC Action News, and this segment is the housing shortage real? Investors have been buying homes like stocks, leaving millions of homes vacant. And we're going to come back with both of these fine gentlemen because this ABC Action News report is out of the Tampa area. So let's go ahead and tune into it, and we'll roundtable this after we see it.
Not just renters who are facing mounting difficulties. According to Zillow, Tampa is the hottest housing market in the country right now. But U.S. Census Bureau numbers show the state of Florida has the most housing vacancies with more than 5.5 million homes. Tonight, ABC Action News goes in depth to show you why there's more to that number than meets the eye. Reporter Mason Morrow reveals why the vacancy rate is so high and why the right home is as hard as ever to close on.
I've already vowed that when we move down there, that this is the last time we are moving.
An anxious several weeks for Jen Simmons and her partner DeVette, who are on the clock trying to move from New Jersey to the Bay Area. Flights back and forth from the Garden State to the Sunshine State to view dozens of houses, holding out hope that one is their new home in waiting.
To rely so heavily on something like that and just not have a definitive answer in a short amount of time as you want it's quite stressful and unsettling.
The couple is moving to Tampa to help take care of Simmons' mother. They just sold her house in the Villages in under 3 days, a byproduct of Florida's hot housing market. But the vacancy rate tells another story. I shared a March report published by LendingTree with Bay Area real estate agent Louis Talakay. In the data pulled from the U.S. Census Bureau, the state of Florida ranks as the top state in the country for housing vacancies, with a reported 1.68 million empty homes.
When you say 1.6 million vacant homes, that means to me there is someone controlling the market artificially.
In Talakay's mind, that stranglehold is under the arms of investors.
We have people coming in here, inflating our market for the purpose of holding onto it and then making out like as if it were a literal stock and then selling it off because they have the leverage and they have the equity right now to be able to do that.
According to realty company Redfin, investors snatched up a record 18% of homes nationwide at the end of 2021. Tampa ranked 8th among all U.S. cities in homes owned by investors. Jacksonville, Miami, and Orlando also ranked in the top 10.
They're being smart and they're trying to hold them and build up their margin and then letting go of certain inventory that they think has met their matches or has met their criteria for selling off.
Talakay says investors normally try to sell as soon as they can, but the value of homes in Tampa keeps climbing by the month.
You do end up with these houses that have, let's say they're probably going to be vacant anywhere between 2, 3, 6 months even.
And investors are planting roots in the heart of Tampa Bay. Data from Redfin shows investors tie up nearly 1/3 of homes in West Tampa, Channelside, and Ybor. Just east of downtown St. Pete, they hold on to 35% of homes.
I honestly think it's very unfair for many home buyers.
I definitely do not want to get into this situation again where it's just completely stressful, like your stomach's in knots all the time.
A situation tipped in the favor of investors. On the surface is a sea of empty homes for Simmons and her family to move into. But in reality, they're fighting tooth and nail just to win out on one.
It's stressful not knowing where you're actually going to end up.
In Tampa Bay, I'm in-depth reporter Mason Morrow, ABC Action.
Okay. All right. That was a little bit longer, but I wanted to get through most of the clip, ladies and gentlemen. So according to ABC Action News, we have 18% of the homes in and around the great Tampa area are vacant. These investors are trading them like stocks. And obviously, right? So, I mean, if it's an option to go ahead and put your money in play, to go ahead and wait for a later day, it's buying low and selling high, right? So, but guys, we have inventory issues. We've got new buyers coming in. We've got increase in interest rates. Rents are through the roof. So we're going to get later on into how HOAs are trying to hedge on some of this stuff just because of the inventory situation. What are your take on this, guys?
So I got a pretty good analogy here, right? So if you think about this in terms of football, I always try to bring an analogy for people listening, right? So a regular cost of a ticket in a regular game is $50 to $70, right? During the Super Bowl, in that same stadium, with two teams traveling from across the country, and the excitement of that one game, those tickets start off at $5,000. And when that happens, what do people do? They buy tickets and they flip them. There's a certain percentage of people in that are buying Super Bowl tickets that have no intention on going to the game. All they're doing is making money. Right now, there's 900 to 1,000 people moving to Florida every single day. So with that knowledge, that's not going on anywhere else, right? With that knowledge, as an investor, why wouldn't I be licking my chops to try to buy up as much property as possible in order to flip it? And that being said, if I'm a consumer, and maybe you don't know this because you just think you cashed out in New York or whatever, and you're coming down to Florida, you buying a house in Florida right now is the equivalent of getting that Super Bowl ticket for less than $5,000 face value. Like it's the same thing. There's just too many people here, and you're competing on both sides. You're competing with everybody who wants to go to the Super Bowl, like everybody wants to go to Florida, and investors want to capitalize on that. So those two things combined make it I don't want to say horrible because I live here, but it's an extremely tough market to be in, especially if you're trying to compete in a median price point. I mean, even up to, I say median, but even up to $700,000, $800,000 now is 20, 30 people bidding war.
Chris, you see a lot of new construction happening, right? all around Central Florida and all throughout the coasts and things like that. And the new builders are saying, hey, we have an inventory situation, but the investors are holding, according to the report, 1.68 million homes vacant. So at some point, there's going to have to be a convergence, right? The investors go to open up all of these homes to sell, and the exact same time, the builders are trying to build forward to go ahead and help out with this situation. And all of a sudden, we have a sea of open homes. What happens to the home values at that point, right? Because it's all supply and demand type situation. What are your takes on this?
I still think that even when it gets to that point, we're still going to have demand. But, people on the back end are, like that one real estate agent is saying it's not fair. Well, here's an opportunity for even a regular consumer to leverage that local market where he's gained $200,000 or $300,000 in equity, to leverage and get into one of those homes and do the same thing on a smaller scale, and to be able to build, a small amount of wealth and have the money that he's gotten his equity work for him. So I look at it from a different, side than that other real estate agent. Is here's a great opportunity for you to build relationships and take, where you look at those, we talked earlier about a hyper local market. And if you can really define and see where those percentages in equity growth are happening at a fast pace, just even around here, $100,000 in 6 months, why wouldn't anybody want to try to get in on that, with really little to no risk based on the contracts for these new builds, where you got to put a small deposit down, and at any given point you can walk. Just be smart on looking at the contract, but a lot of them are written, very buyer friendly, to where you can sit in there and you can either flip it and wholesale it on your own, or, just rent it and have it as an investment property. So, I mean, I get the point. I went under with contract in my neighborhood with 2 investors that are out of state, and, and it kind of goes back into the next segment as far as HOAs blocking, investor purchases. But as long as it's a long-term rental, or if you're going to wholesale it, I mean, the opportunity in Florida from a money-making standpoint, from a consumer, I think is incredible personally. You just have to be aligned with the right people to show you the right strategy to do it. And, you can make a lot of money pretty quick.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, investors are going to buy assets at the end of the day. And with turbulence in the stock market and everything that's going on with the dollar, hard investments like real estate are a very sound decision right now.
All right. So a lot of interesting things to think about, ladies and gentlemen, right? So my little takeaway on so far of this show is this. We have a lot of micro markets across the United States of America. We have different local pressures and things that are happening, right? So get educated, be informed for yourself if you're purchasing or selling. Also, if you're advising anybody, I would say there's a lot of things to go ahead and think about. However, our great Fed is definitely moving towards easing, quantitative easing, right? We have an inflation situation. It's apparent to everybody, right? So now with a lot of folks across the United States of America that have extra equity inside of their home because of what we went through over the last 12 to 18 months, I see that there's been a lot of chatter out there about folks having or needing to have the thought process about pulling some of that equity out of their homes just to live. So this will end up increasing the debt of ourselves individually at a household level, and also I feel across the nation. And with some of these takeaways here, we're moving into our next segment. And has a recession just started in the United States of America? So all of the fine talking points up to this point have been what we're dealing with right now and some of the situations specifically. But as we start looking forward and forecasting, what happens after 2 quarters of recession? We're going to tune in here with Mr. Neil Cavuto, who had Kevin Hassett, who is the former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, talking about maybe a little bit of the housing market and has a recession started. So stay tuned for this one. We'll talk about it after.
Hassett, Kevin, of course, the former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Trump. Kevin, good to have you back. This could be an interesting development Jerry was getting into when the well-to-do are now saying, maybe not. Maybe this isn't quite my cup of tea, getting a vacation home or investment property because things are not nearly as hospitable. What do you make of that?
Right, that's a normal pattern that we've seen over and over, and it's my view that right about now we're entering a recession, and when that happens, and basically with this high inflation, the Fed tightens, then people get extremely wary of buying homes, and you see home prices collapse sometimes. And so there have been repeated episodes of this in Florida, in California, in the places especially where people get second homes. And so I think we're probably about to run through one of those cycles. If you're thinking of buying a house, I honestly encourage you to wait until the end of the year or something, because there's probably a lot of bad news in the real estate sector coming as people start to recognize that we're in a stagflationary recession.
So you think it's happening right now. So if you're right that we're entering a recession, or could be around now, and you need 2 quarters like that, then that recession is a this year event, not a next year event.
Yeah, I think, and a way to think about it is that with prices, if you actually take the current month, wholesale prices, or the current month top line consumer price index, they're running north of 10. And, Neil Cavuto has been covering this stuff forever. And if
All right, gentlemen. The old saying of what goes up must come down has been told to many different citizens for many, many years. So we've seen it. There's always been ebbs and tides inside of the real estate marketplace, and this is what we're dealing with. But so there was Kevin Hassett, former chairman or the Council of Economic Advisors, and says we're starting to move into a recession, and also we're starting to hear people say don't buy. So when we have this mainstream media folks and former government advisors saying don't, that has impact, even small, directly or indirectly, right? So has the recession just started? Tony, what are your thoughts?
So many people on the news and the internet since the dawn of time have been trying to guess. And in my opinion and personal experience, no matter what anyone's squawking about, even us, at the end of the day, if somebody wants to buy a home and they could afford it and they get it, and the market's not great later, stay, don't sell, and enjoy your house until the market's better. Are we in a recession? Are we going to be in a recession? Ultimately, nobody has that magic 8-ball. I believe because of the internet, because we're talking, a lot of people are talking, the consumers in general are getting a little more educated. So I think we're just feeling a little squeeze. I think we're feeling a little bit of pain because of the change, because of a lot of people who waited. Now they're paying the price of waiting. So we're going to hear those people complain. And of course, the news is going to kowtow to that because they want to create a little bit of so more people keep tuning in. That being said, I always come from the position of all real estate is local. So wherever a consumer is, if they can get that house and the price point works and the loan is fine for them, no matter what the market does, that's what matters, especially if they have to move because of work. So there's going to be some push-pull factors affecting whether or not people are buying things. And no matter, even during the bad economy, back like in 07, 08, in 09, when things were crazy, there were still people buying and selling houses. So I don't look as much at the fanfare and the alleged people crying wolf. I'm just going to look at what is the market like today, what's for sale. Let's look at the values, let's look at the trends, and do our best as a real estate agent to help our clients make the best decision possible. I wouldn't worry as much about a recession. I would look at the recent data, the data today, and make very careful assumptions about tomorrow and just go from there.
Nick, we keep hearing things like the Fed is slowly working into quantitative easing to stunt inflation, right? And the Fed even itself is talking about possible 2 to 6 more additional rounds of interest rate increases. So they're working hard. They're up in their safety jet, like we've talked about. They've taken off to go ahead and fix things. We'll see how easy the landing is when they come down. But if people are starting to hear maybe this year we could have an issue and now might not be the right time to go ahead and purchase, what's that going to do?
I think there's always a certain amount of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? Obviously, mainstream news, the internet, everything fuels most people's fires. Most people get their news from social media, right? People are listening to us right now. We're social media. news show, right? So again, going back to, I think, unprecedented times. Number one, know your market, know where you're at, right? If the whole United States crashes, I don't think Florida's going to crash. Personal opinion, 900 people a day are moving here. The reason why I think it's a little bit different right now than it was back 2007 and 8, not that we didn't have the internet back then, because we did, and people were very proficient on the internet. Social media was just starting, but now we are in a Zoom economy. And so now the mass majority of people have adopted this Zoom economy, and there's way more employers that are letting you work from home. So the idea that you would move to a state that's more affordable, like Florida, if you're coming from a higher price state with higher home prices, and you can work from anywhere and have any job that you want in that location, I think that creates almost like an oasis, like for us in our market, to be standalone. Is that going to reflect across the country? I don't know. But do I think that purchasers or sellers in Florida are going to not get the benefit of all these people moving here? I don't. I think we're a unicorn of a market here, right? So
you're suggesting that this is right now a lot of micro markets, right? A lot of unemployment rates, high unemployment rates, and low income opportunities drive typically housing markets. And obviously, Florida has just been a big funnel for a lot of folks.
But you can work from anywhere, right? So like you literally can make money online in any state, in any situation. And I think that plays a big factor. It plays a big factor where people move. You have a lot more homeschooling going on. You have a lot more work from home. You don't have to be in that specific city. So there's it's a little bit different as far as where people can choose to live, right?
So knowing this, right, the investors go ahead and move out in front of the surge of people who are transitioning and relocating to get their hands on the inventory. And now I'm hearing HOAs are trying to do whatever they can to stop investors from coming in so that there's available inventory and some other things. Nick, I've got a segment here from Yahoo Finance that are talking about this specifically. Let's go ahead and listen in, and then we'll roundtable this with everybody and talk about it.
Welcome back, everyone. We're back with a look at what's been happening with institutional investors who have been buying up single-family homes and pricing out a lot of first-time home buyers. Let's bring back in Alexis Keenan here with more on that. Alexis?
Okay, yes, these HOAs, the homeowners associations across the country, this is a report coming from the Wall Street Journal. They say that they're increasingly trying to block institutional investors from buying up specifically single family homes. And the way that they're doing that is through amendments in the HOA documents to say that renters will be blocked in some fashion. Think about things like caps on the number of renters that can live within a community at any given time. Also, lockup periods during which a home cannot be rented. 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. They run the gamut really here. Now, some of the reasons they say behind this are, one, to preserve the integrity and the beauty of the neighborhood. For example, they want the homes in their neighborhoods to be taken care of. Another reason is to keep inventory available for locals who need these affordable homes. Now, trends in these home purchases by investors, I want you to take a look at how it looks.
All right. So all actions typically equal a reaction of some sort, right? Domino falls. You know the rest of the story, ladies and gentlemen. So all of the things that we just talked about, now the local HOAs in some different areas and folks are trying to go ahead and prevent these things, obviously, because they see it as a issue in a situation. Who wants to kick this one off?
I'll kick it off. Again, this is more fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This is not anything revolutionary or new. Condo associations have been doing this since the beginning of time in the form of rent, but also when Airbnb first started to get really popular, they started to cap the number of people, and you had to live in the property. It couldn't be an investment property, second home, whatever, vacation home. So the idea that this is trickling down to HOA makes sense. But this isn't anything that like all of a sudden the big bad HOA is doing something that's never been done before. This is standard practice in the condo world.
Okay, Chris, where are you at on this?
I mean, absolutely, Nick. And then two, I thought it was kind of laughable where she was, trying to keep their neighborhood pristine and nice. They still have to follow the HOA guidelines in that local community.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just, that part I didn't really kind of get as far as renters. I mean, that investor or whoever owns the home is still going to have to abide by those rules. So I don't think that's really a play on it. And then also from somebody that lives in an HOA, if that's going to drive my home value up to a point, I mean, I obviously don't want to live in, Party Central, but if it's going to help drive my property value up, I mean, to a sustainable point, sure. I don't see anything wrong with it. But like Nick said, this has been going on, especially Florida, which is a vacation rental hotspot. I mean, this isn't anything new. And, with HOAs, there's, guidelines written in there as far as, a year minimum lease, no more than 2 years leased. You have to live in the home for a certain amount of time. And every micro market community has those, bylaws written in them. And it's not changed. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit jaded on it, but I don't see how this is any new news, really.
Okay. Tony, where are you at on this?
Chris is right. Nick is right. That this is not old news. As a matter of fact, one of my personal professional points of pride, and we all have at least one, is whenever I'm dealing with a property, a part of just speaking about me, my job as a real estate agent, in addition to knowing my market to the best of my ability, as much and as often as I can, when I do a deal and we get the CC&Rs and all those HOA documents, I read them, not to memorize everything, but it becomes part of your craft. And when I start to see commonalities like the maximum percentage of homes in our community that are rentals cannot exceed, 42%. And I see these different percentages. So that educates me to educate the upcoming client. Hey, I'm an investor. I want to buy 3 condos in that community. Oh, hold on a second. Because the MLS, at least in our CR MLS here in Southern California, when an agent fills out the information, they're supposed to check with the HOA about how many total condos are in the community, put that in there. And of course, the agent on the other side of the transaction should verify that and do the best they can, contact the HOA and say, how many of those are rentals? So they do that generally so that it doesn't become a big, gigantic corporate community. It's supposed to be we the people. It's fine for investors to buy the homes, but generally you don't want to have investors owning a little tiny chunk of the city. Case in point, some of these brand new developers in my area, and I'm not exaggerating, we won't sell you more than 2 houses at one time. Well, there's people coming in wanting 3 or 4 of them, and they'll pay cash. They say, no, you can't buy more than 2. So isn't that funny? They limit it because if someone were to buy, an investor especially, come in and buy, I want 6 of your brand new homes, $1 million a piece. I'll take 6, bag it up, I'm out of here. No, because what happens, that investor becomes direct competition to that developer inside their own community, and that can create some havoc. That's a whole other story. So with the HOA, I do appreciate, all sides, but I definitely appreciate living in an HOA-based place myself, how the HOA and the people who are on the group, like the people who live here, say, we understand people want to have rentals here, but we don't want it to get out of control because that can lead to all kinds of little issues of different orders of magnitude. If my community where I live right now were to be, say, 65% rentals, and you go over to the neighbor, hi, you're blasting music 2:00 in the morning, cut it out. You too, it gets out of hand. So I believe if you had to love or hate an HOA, I would choose love it because I appreciate the control, the homogeneous of the community, so that when I go to sell, I don't have a pink house next to me and the one guy with 17 cars in his driveway. So I like the control. And to finalize the thought about the investors, unless an investor wants to go create their own community and handle their CC&Rs and rules their way, they're going to have to go with the existing inventory like around here. And I would want to see home owners living in a community because given, one thing or the other has to be, I'd rather see more people owning it. And I'm glad we have our HOA and I appreciate the investors. But, they're like Nick had alluded to, they're here to buy assets. They're here to make money. But when those renters come in and you have a whole bunch of renters all of a sudden in your community, I'm looking at the love, the reality, the environment for the people. And boy, we can go on for 17 hours about all the troubles that could lead to. Homeowners aren't perfect, but they rather have it their way.
Tony, how can people get in touch with you if they need some representation or advice out of Southern California?
Very easily. They can either call me at 949-633-6741, or they can just go to tony.com BABARINO.com, and you can have all kinds of ways to reach me right there. I'm happy to talk and help.
Thank you, Mr. Tony. We appreciate you. Chris, you happen to be a leader in your HOA.
Yeah. I guess you could say that. They voted me up on the board, so I'm kind of
a big deal. You're kind of a big deal.
I like to have parties,
Yeah.
Chris, how can people get in touch with you if they're moving to Central Florida and need some representation from your team?
Hit me up at chrismanka.com, or you can give me a call or shoot a text at 707-685-6254. Facebook, Instagram, any way that normal people, communicate nowadays, I will be there, and I would be blessed to have a conversation with you.
You're helping a lot of relocating buyers right now from New York, Pennsylvania territory that are coming down here. You said you had roughly 20 different clients that are coming in that you're working through these processes.
Yeah, the relocation right now is just nuts coming out, especially New York and the Connecticut, PA area is, and it goes right back to where we were talking about earlier as far as prices and different micro markets. And then, they're getting kind of nervous because everybody goes back to 07, 08, but it's similar, but it's very, very different. And you have to educate people on that because of, how we said earlier, how hard it is to get a loan now. It's completely different.
Thank you for your time, Christopher. That was Chris Manka from Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to get in touch with both of those gentlemen. They're brilliant. Nick, why should people come hang out with us at reunation.com? And why should they listen to Real Estate America News? Are we worthy or not?
Man, I think we're unpacking a lot of valuable information for everybody listening. And Real Estate Uncensored, or Real Estate RU Nation, if we will, right, has a lot of other great shows just like this. So if you're picking up what we're putting down, we got a lot of other great programs on that. So go to runation.com and check us out, get all the show notes, and also get in contact with us. And if you like what you see and you kind of want to be on the show with your name and lights, then drop us a line and maybe we'll get you on a segment.
Outstanding. Nick, they can get in touch with you at runation.com as well by clicking on your bio and, and filling out that contact form, right?
Absolutely.
Good deal. Thank you for co-hosting today with me, Mr. Nicholas.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking around. I see a lot of you still viewing us live. We appreciate you immensely. I would ask you to do us a blessing and a favor. If you could go ahead and hit that like button down below, give us some positive comments. Get involved with us. We'd really appreciate it. That way it really boosts up the algorithm and helps our show get promoted to more people, so that all of the time that we do to prepare it and talk and everything else doesn't go to waste. So thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a blessed rest of your week. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday at high noon on YouTube and on Facebook and some of the other channels that we're viewing on to catch us. And you always can catch the replay. Please tell your friends about us. So until next time.